What are civil rights? First, I'm going to preview the CRA. CRA number 1. How were women treated differently than men under the original United States Constitution? Use 2 details from the text to support your answer. What are civil rights? What does civil rights mean to Americans? The Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal, but they are endowed, which means given by their Creator, which is referring to God, with certain inalienable rights. Inalienable means you can't take it away. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This explains the rights of all Americans. The rights of people in a society are defined by the government with input from its citizens. This means civil rights are the rights guaranteed to people because they are citizens of a nation. It does not matter if these rights, it does not matter if these people are different genders, races, or have different religious beliefs. As long as they are citizens, they have equal rights. However, not all people are able to exercise their rights as Americans. This is true both today and in the past. Subheading, and remember the subheading gives us a clue about what this section is going to be about. U.S. Constitution segregates, that means separates, Native Americans and blacks. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence stated that the United States was its own country and no longer under British rule. In 1789, the newly reformed government approved the U.S. Constitution. It explained the rights of its citizens. It also formalized the segregation of Native Americans and black people. A year later, Congress passed the Naturalization Act of 1790. It stated that to become a U.S. citizen, a person must be a white, free person of good character living in the United States for 2 years. People born in the United States to fathers born in the United States or who had become citizens officially were citizens. Women could be citizens too, but they were unable to vote in most states. Women also had limits to their rights. They often could not own property. The country soon began to grow to the west. The American population had more races than before. For example, a treaty in 1848 after a war with Mexico promised Mexicans in the United States rights as citizens. They were not treated fairly when it came to owning property or in politics. The Chinese population in the United States also experienced the same treatment. Chinese people had become an important part of Western mining towns. They built many of the railroads that connected to the East Coast and the West Coast. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 would not allow them to become Americans. The Dred Scott decision in 1857 took civil rights away for African Americans. It prevented them from becoming citizens. This left free and enslaved Americans, African Americans, Chinese Americans, Mexican Americans, and Native Americans segregated or separated in a growing nature. Rights on paper, but not in daily lives. Changes to the U.S. Constitution in the late 1800s allowed many of these people to become citizens. Native Americans, though, were not allowed to become citizens until 1924. In the late 1880s, Jim Crow laws allowed the segregation between blacks and whites. These and other laws undermined the changes to the Constitution that granted equal rights for citizens. People who had become citizens found their rights denied or ignored. For African Americans, Latinos, and Asians, becoming or being born U.S. citizens did not ensure their rights. Certain groups had to fight for their rights they had been given by law, but these laws were only rights on paper. They did not actually have those rights in their daily lives. For this reason, the fight for civil rights is called the civil rights struggle. The civil rights struggle was about equal treatment for all races. Now it is about equal treatment for all groups. When you start your first CRA, look for a section that talks about women. You may have to scan in there and not read the whole thing, then you should read it closely. The second CRA is, do you think that the changes to the Constitution in the late 1800s helped African Americans? Use two details from the text to support your answer. When you say the word think, you have to infer the answer, and this question is asking you for your opinion, and you need a reason supported by details.